Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of Thrive Like a Parent podcast. I've talked about this before, but it's been years since I've talked about it. And today we are going to talk about the struggles and transitions and what to expect and what we didn't expect and all the things in between regarding going back to school. It can be such a huge transition for you, such a huge transition for your kiddos, and we're going to talk about it. Back to school isn't just about sharpening our pencils and buying new sneakers. It's also about resetting our nervous system for our kids and for us. If we lean into structure, sensory tools, and connection with our children, we set the stage for a more smooth transition into the school year and more connection and regulation with our loved ones. First, let's just say that my children went back to school on Tuesday. And already this week, I have one child home with a fever. Last night, I was running around, and all this week, I've been running around starting baseball practice. And I gotta tell you, like the to-do list hit me like a ton of bricks out the wazoo. And I don't even know where all these things are coming from. I have been staying on top of things and doing work, and I have been functioning in the world during summertime. But for some reason, everything is just all hit at once. And I'm not going to lie. I used to be one who craved. I was like, oh, I cannot wait for school to start. And I'd be like, bye. Like, see you later. Have a great year. Like, yes. I literally remember years and years and years ago doing a reel. It probably went viral now that I think of it, but I actually did a few. And there was one where I was like, good morning, my neighbors. And it was a voiceover, and this dude was like, oh, fuck off. And it was like, yes, yes, fuck you too. I think it was from Eddie Murphy, one of his movies. Anyway, I probably posted that 2 years in a row, and every year that one went viral. And then I also did one where I was like dancing on top of my coffee table and on my bed and all over the place because I was so ecstatic that my children went back to school. I have to tell you, it's the complete opposite this year. And I don't think, I know it is because life feels so grounded when I can release the structure. And that's because I have worked so hard and trained my brain and collected the data like I talk about and practiced this and placed all of this information that I teach you on my own self, which is to not fear the instability within your life, right? Our brains crave structure, stability, control, structure, stability, control. And so the predictability of having a routine feels so good for parents, especially when your kids have been home all summer and you're just tired of them being home and the noise and the stimuli and all the different things. I now have an 8 and 11-year-old, and I'm in this pocket. I know I'm in this pocket, this window of beautiful, happy joy. Yes, they fight like cats and dogs, just bicker back and forth, the two of them. But at the end of the day, they love each other. But because I have done a lot of rewiring in my brain and I've done a lot of shifting in my brain, I now love the freedom of lack of structure, where it's, what are we doing today? I don't know. We're going to just do this and then we're going to figure it out. And I probably would have to say that I need to give Carter some credit as well, because he has helped me lean into that as well. And I knew that that was one of the benefits of having a partner like Carter, and his personality is I had to really face the discomfort of not always having the structure, right? For me, I used to even tell Carter, I used to be like, you don't understand. I need a schedule. I need rigidity. I need structure. I need this. I need to know. I need to plan. I need to all the things, because it took so much planning to make sure that I had the proper childcare or all the different things. It took a lot. And now my kids are older and it's easier. And so, yes, I do crave summertime. It is my favorite time of year. I literally look forward to it all year long. I kind of mourn the loss of it when it's over. I'm not going to lie. And, one of my recent podcasts, I was telling you that I even was kind of thinking about and processing and mourning the loss of having, some time for myself. The transition back from having my kids home from camp has been easy breezy, no big deal, which kind of just shows how, I guess, well I'm doing in terms of navigating being a parent and a solo parent and how healthy my nervous system is. Which, speaking of, I posted a reel while I was in Florida at the beach recently, like a week ago. And I said something like, I track humans' nervous systems for a living. And this is my expertise. And it's like point of view when you realize your nervous system is healthier than it's been in years after your husband took his own life. And oh my gosh, did people shred me up. This is like a side note, then we'll get back to the school stuff. I couldn't believe it. And I like said something in my stories and I was like, look, we're going to adjust this once and we're never going to adjust this again. I am not happy that my husband did this, right? It's not, yay, I'm healthy and mentally healthy because my husband did. Like that's not what that said. It said after, right? So then I changed it. I took it down because I just didn't feel like dealing with the trolls. And I wrote since my husband, like my nervous system is the healthiest it's been since my husband took his own life. And I think that went a little bit better. But I will say that I'm in a really good place. I know I keep telling you that. Gosh, has it taken me so long to get here? And I think that it's really important to not only talk about the struggles, and you've probably heard me cry multiple times on this podcast, but it's also really important to talk about the joy and the wins and to let you know that there's hope and that you can get through hard things and you can get to the other side, which, yeah, that doesn't really ever truly, truly exist, the other side. Like it's always going to be here, but I'm doing really well. Okay, not going to lie. There's a pause that we edited out in this podcast because I just ran to give my child ramen noodles. I don't want your at me's about how nasty ramen noodles are. I totally know. That's my children's sick food of choice. I'm out of breath. I just ran upstairs to give my child ramen noodles because he's home from school with a fever. Anyway, let's keep going with the conversation. But I'm keeping it real per usual because life is not always perfect and dandy. And I want you to know that I am human and navigating and juggling real life. So, the first thing I want to talk about as it relates to the nervous system and going back to school is why your kids could possibly feel such big emotions or nerves going back to school. So, as you know, I always say, and I've already said it in this podcast, is our brain craves structure, stability, and control. And if they have had different structure and different schedules the entire summer, they're not used to the structure of school, as well as they're getting a new teacher potentially. And gosh, maybe they're even going to new school. Maybe they're going to middle or high school or kindergarten or college or all the different things, right? And so there is a shift, there is a change, and our brain is going to feel wildly uncomfortable. I got a question in my Q&A box recently that said my son went and met the teacher at his new middle school, and ever since then he's been bouncing off the walls. That makes a lot of sense to me because yes, our brain craves structure, stability, and control. We are also going to have behaviors and a response based on the lack of feeling structure, stability, and control. Therefore, your child, within this specific example, is naturally trying to regulate their nervous system by using a lot of movement. They said that they were bouncing off the walls and they can't stop moving. So, your son is trying to regulate his nervous system through tons and tons of movement, right? If they can't verbalize it and they can't say, I feel really uncomfortable, I'm really nervous about school, this feels really different to me, we're going to have to process it some way. And so movement is really, really great. And so, yes, they may be bouncing off the walls because there's some struggles going on in their brain. What you can do in this situation is just simply talk to them. Hey, how are you feeling? They may not even recognize, like, consciously recognize that that is what's going on for them. Truly. And so if they don't understand or they don't verbalize that to you, you could say, "Hey, I noticed since we checked out the new school, I've noticed that a little bit's been going on with you. You want to talk about it? How are you feeling about your new school? Are you happy? Are you excited?" Don't offer them the feelings unless they say, I don't know, then give them a prompt. But try and have a conversation with them. Try and move them through the emotions. Try and move them through the process of processing what is going on within their life, right? You may be having some big emotions too, because you're about to jump right back in to the morning rush and routine, to getting your child prepped and ready for school and maybe you know that their clothing and textures and that is a pain in the ass in the morning, or there's loud noises at school and you know that they hate that, or that there's hunger, or maybe your child's on medication and then you stress out about them not eating. Like there's so many different things. And that is just the morning. Like those are just things to think about in the morning, right? Are they going to get out the door on time, tie their shoes, get their water, have everything they need, all of that stuff. So that's a common stressor. Now, during the day, there's common stressors like bright lights and cafeteria noise and new expectations if they're, of course, in a different grade, and limited movement breaks when we just like gave our children tons and tons and tons of movement all summer long. Okay. So that's kind of just during the school day. Now, after school, we have to worry about things like our children needing to decompress and holding it together all day, right? But then coming home and melting down and hoping that they feel safe at home. So that is like a laundry list of worries and common sensory stressors that show up during this transition time of going back to school, right before school, or the first few weeks of school. Now, how long are all these transitions going to take? I would say give it 3 weeks. If your child is going to a new environment, like moving from lower to middle, middle to upper, or upper to even college, 3 weeks to 3 months. Okay. Same with you. Like, I am definitely not having the best week. My children started school this week, like I said, and I also got my period, so I'm a little grumpy and like I just know. And I'm just like, okay, well, that's where we're at for today. And I'm just trusting it. I'm kind of just allowing it, and I know it'll pass. And I know that I don't prefer to wake up early. I know that I don't prefer to go downtown with so much traffic because school is back in school. I know that I don't prefer to feel stuck at home in the afternoon when I would love to go to a yoga class, but my kids are playing with their neighbors, in the neighborhood, and I kind of feel stuck at times, and that is a very difficult feeling. Also, I become not a school bus, but I guess you could say just a bus in general, because now I'm starting to schlep them from, sports to activity to activity to activity, and that is back as well. So my body is starting to get used to what it's like being back in the rhythm. And instead of freaking out, or instead of snapping at my kids, I can remain regulated and I can just say, okay, this is where we're at, and kind of shrug it off and just be okay. Or maybe I'm kind of quiet, right? Instead of snapping, I just kind of stay a little bit more quiet, and that's okay too. But I also know that we'll get through it because we do every year. Now, let's talk about signs of a child if they are struggling sensory wise with this transition, and whether that sensory struggle is at school or at home. Usually that means it's happening at school, and then you may see it at home. One of the ways that you can see it is either meltdowns at school, where the teacher's like, hey, we're really struggling here to stay on task or to sit in our chair, to follow directions, or we're melting down, or, throwing things, or we're running out of the classroom. Like there could be multiple different things, right, that the teacher says is going on. Or your child can hold it all together and wait till they get home, which is like so much fun, because then they have meltdowns after school, and it's not just bad behavior. It is truly their brain is trying to cope with the shift and change of all the struggles that I just mentioned could possibly take place during the school day, before school, with the morning routine, like all of that you need to take into consideration. Now, we can also be struggling on a sensory level if your child is complaining of clothing and food texture and noises in the classroom, or just extra intensity. Yeah, it can truly be a struggle for your child to be in bright lights all day and be asked things all day long and be around a lot of different kids. And it can be a lot for them. The other way that we can see struggle sensory wise is difficulty transitioning from one activity to the next. Whether it's going from the cafeteria to the classroom to PE, PE to art to music, music to back to the classroom. That can be really a big struggle because there's a lack of safety and, again, stability. Will your child get used to the routine? 1,000%. But in the beginning, totally understandable. Now, if you find that your child is either number one, withdrawn, or number two, slightly more, I hate the word hyperactive because that sounds like there's something wrong with them. But think of it in terms of just lots of activity rather than hyper. I don't know. Hyper sounds like I think it's just because of the connotation used with it, but like hyper versus hypo is just it is what it is. So hyperactive behaviors as a coping mechanism, which is exactly what we talked about with that Q&A question of we're utilizing lots of movement and jumping from task to task to task, and it is truly a way to attempt to regulate our nervous system. Truly, like it is truly a way to try and feel like we have some control over what's going on around us, right? Sometimes we can feel like we're spinning out of control, but if we stay hyped and we do different things, there can feel like we're kind of floating, and there's an ability of safety within that. And you may never have experienced that before, but I've definitely experienced that. And I've always told you my gas pedal. So, very much so, I've experienced that in my lifetime. And I've seen it with, I can't even tell you at this point, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clients as adults and kids, right? Like it's a brain is a brain. So, what can we do? What can we do to support ourselves? What can we do to support the stress? What can we do to support the sensory? Like, what can we do? The first thing we can do is setting up the home environment for success. And the first step to that is predictability, right? Visual schedules or countdowns or consistent routines that will help your child as well as yourself move through the transitions of going back to school and getting in a rhythm, getting in a routine. And I promise you, your brain will begin to feel safe and happy and love the structure. We can also provide something called a sensory safe zone, which is like a cozy corner or a beanbag, a weighted blanket, headphones, fidget toys, anything to decompress. This can be at school and it can be at home, right? I have a tiny little closet underneath the stairs in my laundry room area. I totally could make that. My kids are pretty big at this point, but I totally could have made that like a safe space and like a safe little sensory room. My neighbor next door, who has literally the same layout of house as myself, she has made that little crawl space or that space underneath her stairs. She took away the door and she made it like a dog bed area corner. And so it just provides like a safety, right? So find something like that for your children. Maybe even get a tent or a hanging swing with that lycra material where it's dark. You can do a bunch of different things. Send tons of stuff to school if your child is struggling sensory wise. Send a whole sensory bin. Send a balancing board so they can balance in the back of the classroom. If they're balancing and standing on something, they'll be able to kind of fidget and move while also listening. But it's not a toy. If we use it as a toy, we'll have to take it away, right? So we need boundaries around us so we know what's expected. There's multiple things you can do to make sensory safe zones, either at school or at home, to kind of decompress, give your child's brain a break. And you need to find some sensory safe zones too. For instance, last night I have been going all day long, worked a full day, and then ran Eli all around for baseball. Then I was outside watching baseball, had ants all in my water bottle. I was thirsty. I had on open toe shoes. I got some ant bites, like you name it, it happened yesterday. After dinner, I climbed in the bathtub, and that's my sensory safe zone. And I relaxed and I turned out all the lights and I lit a candle and I just existed. And that's all I needed to kind of reboot. Now, a really big tip that you can utilize if necessary is for transitions, build in a buffer time between school and homework or dinner, which is like snack and quiet time, right? Or quiet play. This is the same thing that I recommend to you and all of my clients in terms of don't just jump right out of the chair from work, drive your ass home and be like, hi, I'm home. Like you need a transition and you don't even recognize you need it, but it will make your life so much different if you choose to give yourself a transition between home life and work life. Help your brain kind of transition between those two, right? So it is okay to give your children that. Brittany, one of our coaches who's been a coach with us for many, many years, she's utilized that tool for multiple years. Every single day when her son comes home from the bus, the bus is loud, the bus is noisy, it's crowded, it's all the things. Some quiet time in his room is exactly where he goes. He's done that for years and he knows that's what's the plan. And so he just enjoys it and goes right up there. Right now, let's talk about the dreaded mornings. Okay. I'm going to give you a few tools that may help you get through a smoother morning and the afternoon. Things like prepping your clothes and lunches and bags the night before, offering sensory friendly clothing options, building a calm soundtrack into the routine where everything kind of can be, if you want, right? Not like Pearl Jam in the morning. That can totally support the morning. And then in the afternoon, snacks, movement, swing can really help. Trampolines, I always talk about trampolines. Those are great for, like holiday gifts for your kids. Going on a walk. We used to walk every evening. That is an awesome one as well to kind of calm our kids' nervous system down. Maybe a dance party. Give yourself some time and movement. Give your children some movement as well because they've just been sitting in a chair. Now, the evening, let's make the evening as smooth and predictable with a wind down ritual. So I don't want like a bath where we're like splashing water all over the place and there's rubber duckies everywhere and we're like singing it like no. Like the bath that I just told you about is a bath that you can cultivate for your children as well. Calm music, deep pressure when they, wrap themselves in a towel. You can give them deep pressure in bed. You can lay on top of them, give them lots of snuggles. You can do a weighted blanket. There are so many things for the evening time. And don't forget, I have that go, but and don't forget, I have that Go the F to Sleep course, which can deep dive even more into all of that of how to help you sleep and get your kids to sleep on a predictable schedule so that you're not running after them all evening long and they stay in their beds and you can get some sleep. I do want to have a caveat of reminding you that everyone's nervous system needs something different. Everyone's brain truly does need something different. So, if we can encourage as a family, if we can encourage the idea of this is a family team effort and everyone is contributing to a calm transition or a calm environment, that can also be something that can be helpful to the entire family dynamic, especially if one is struggling versus the other. Whether you're struggling when your kid is kicking the back of your chair and you've just been sitting in carpool lineup for don't even get me started on that. We've had a conversation about that before. But there's a lot of things you can do to kind of have those family meetings and discuss this is how it's going to go. And we need to be able to support everyone within our family because it is a dynamic, right? Like we all have different needs for sure. Now, I got two more things to talk about. And this one is super, super important, which is your nervous system matters too. And kids will co regulate with your nervous system, right? So if you're rushed, if you're tense, if you're dysregulated, if you're snapping, they're going to feel it, right? I have definitely had years where I have felt all those things I just said. This year, I definitely don't feel those things, but I definitely can feel the transition from summer to back to school. But I'm breathing. I'm going to my sensory safe zone in my tub and I'm working out and I'm going on walks and I'm taking breaks and I'm resting when I can and I'm transitioning from work to home life and like all the things I'm doing. Like I said, might still be in a grumpy mood, but I'm still fine. I'm still going. So just, I want you to make sure, and I'm going to encourage you to make sure to build in breaks for yourself. Take time for you. Validate your feelings that are coming up for you. Reassure yourself that this isn't going to last forever. This is a transition. Our brains and bodies aren't used to this structure or this routine because we were just somewhere different for 2, 3 months. And give yourself some grace, right? The last thing I want to say about your nervous system and parenting and all the different things, I just want to remind you that we all fuck up. I just want to remind you that just because I'm telling you I'm good this year and I'm not tense and rushed and all the different things doesn't mean that I don't snap at my kids ever, right? Oftentimes I find that if we snap at our kids, we're like, oh my gosh, I'm such a terrible parent. Why can't I keep it together? I need to do better. And then you like put all of this pressure on yourself to like apologize and say you were wrong and you shouldn't have done that. And then the next day you try even harder and like on and on and on and on and on and on and on. Okay. That's just like a recipe for building negative feedback loops in your brain, increasing dysregulation because you're going higher and higher up on the curve, trying to prove to yourself that you can do it. And again, it's a recipe for a disaster. So instead of that, I want you to remind yourself that repair is always an option and not in a way of saying, I shouldn't have done that. I'm a terrible parent. I want you instead to say, how did that make you feel when mommy screamed at you today? Give them a voice. Let them verbalize how they feel. And if they say, I don't know, what I want you to say is, I'm going to let you know how I felt. I felt really sad. I felt really frustrated with myself. And I'm really sorry that mommy did that. Right. I'm not shaming myself and saying that's not how I should talk and I should never have done that. And that's not a way a mom, like, I don't do that. Right. But repair is always something you can do with your kiddos. And I just need to remind you that even though you snap at your kids, you're not a terrible parent. Like, you're just not. You're doing the best you can and you're in the midst of a transition and it is okay, right? But from that space, let's try and reconnect with our kiddos and repair and keep going and say, all right, maybe tomorrow will be a better day. Maybe it won't. Who knows? But like, it's fine. And now, the last and final piece I want to talk to you about is reframing expectations. The first few weeks of school are going to be bumpy. It just is, right? It doesn't mean something is wrong. I want you to, again, encourage grace and compassion for yourself over correction and correcting yourself or correcting your kids. Um, and they need more support than discipline at the moment. You know, I'm a fan of natural consequences, but let's get through the transition first. Let's get things settled. Let's settle into our new chairs and desks and sharpened pencils. And then we'll hold expectations of what we expect our children to do because we need to let them settle into the space and you need to settle in as well. Now, before we wrap, the last thing I'm going to say to you is that I wish you a wonderful year. I know that we've had years where we've had fear to send our children to school because of what has taken places in school. I know that there's so many of you that have chosen to just do homeschool. We here in Texas had an awful tragedy this summer at summer camp. And I have to tell you, my heart broke for those parents who lost their children in the floods as I thought about sending my children to school. And so with all that in mind, I just want to kind of bring it all together and remind you that this too shall pass because it is a transition. Life is short, and the older my kids get, the faster it's going. So enjoy the moments along the way, even if they're uncomfortable, and make eye contact, smile, give your kiddos hugs, hug your partner, hug yourself, right? Hug your dog, do what you need to do. But let's make this year fun. And that's what I intend on doing for us. And I hope you have a great year too. And until next time, XOXO, Dr. B.